From 17 once again. This is my Call of Juarez, Bound in Blood, very hard difficulty walkthrough. This is Act 4, and it's entitled Deep in the Wilderness. Or Deep into the Wilderness, if you want to be too particular about it. And we're beginning here, playing as Ray again. We're escorting a horse and wagon that has our brother on it and some other affiliates. And we're going to be taking on some Indians, which is probably not a very politically correct term these days, but in the context of this story and in the context of this period, that's what they are. They might be Native Americans now, and we might be a bit more respectful towards them now, but at this point, it was blood eat blood, and we're about to go to town. So I'm going to be using double volcano guns, as you've seen before, and we're going to be getting in here and doing as much damage as I can. There's a whole sequence at the beginning where you navigate and get some exposition with the wagons and do various things that help with the character building and setting of the stage and setting up the dramatic tension. You see this horse get shot in the head then? That was one of my own guys that shot it by accident. Pathing reasons. But there's a decent chunk of gameplay where you don't really have to do anything except for be part of the world, and those expositional moments are fantastic when you're getting into the game, when you're first playing, but for a walkthrough it would just be me rambling, and there's going to be 48 minutes of me rambling on this video as it is, and you don't need any more than that unless you're a big fan of it yourself, and not everybody is. Plus it saves me some time as well, so I cut those bits out, but we're going to be moving down this creek towards the left hand side, taking out as many of these guys as we can, and then we're going to be pushing up onto that cliff top and giving ourselves an overlook position. One of the cool things you'll notice in this game, though, which I don't think I've mentioned, is when you get full concentration mode, it does this interesting thing where it makes the enemies contrast against the background. It kind of rouges them and makes them stand out with a bit of a highlight, and it's something that can be really, really useful. As much as it's frustrating building concentration meter and then losing it, the highlight that it gives you once you accrue it again is really useful, and watch out for it on this next particular sequence as we kill these people. So it's just told me I've got it just then, and I don't know if you saw that I didn't really give you a good example, that one, but if you've been watching the gameplay you might have noticed it definitely plays with the contrast, and it does help certain enemies stand out, and when you get it against these Indian guys, you'll notice that it can be very, very difficult to spot without it, so it can be a bit of a godsend. And this wicker basket over here, this is a signifier that is one of the secrets on these missions. On the Native American land areas, you will not come across the traditional secret boxes usually. You'll come across those ornate woven ones. So if you are looking for the secrets, and there is an achievement for doing it if you're that kind of way inclined, that would be what you're going to be looking out for. But now that we've returned to Juarez, we're going to be trapped in a little bit of a conversation here, and then it's going to be our task to push forward again. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this is the section where I try to get on a horse that's not mine, and it's my partner's horse, and he runs away, and I'm like, let's go tandem on this horse, let's be true brothers, and he just fucks off. So I have to go back and find my horse, and my horse is actually at the back of this little bit of water, but I just, for whatever reasons, I didn't realise it was, and it ended up costing me a little bit of time. Thankfully, the brother's pathing works in such a specific way that he will wait for you, and I've always been a fan of that ever since the sandbox games utilised it in the chase segments. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there are times when you have to chase somebody in certain open world games, and for instance in a lot of Grand Theft Autos, if they get away from you, you've failed, they just fuck off, it's just straight up they leave. But there are some games where they will wait around the corner for you to catch up to a certain proximity, and then they'll run away again. And it's not very realistic, and it does break immersion, but as far as making it a more fun experience, you never fail those segments because they're always waiting for you to chase them. It's kind of that interesting paradox, isn't it, of the eternal chaser and chased, where they need the other to be a system. Without the other, they're nothing, and if they ever found the other or ever got their objective, they wouldn't know what to do, because to them life is constantly the chase, it's not the destination. It's like Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote. Do you really think Wile E. Coyote would know what to do with Roadrunner if he ever actually got him? Because he's tried for so long, it's almost a reality that will never happen. So it's that existential crisis of, he's never meant to catch Roadrunner, and he probably never will. Even though, I don't know if that series has ended, and maybe in the final episode he actually did. And I'd be interested to see what they did with it, but that's kind of the appeal and the allure, isn't it? What would Tom do if he killed Jerry, even though every single episode is Tom trying to kill Jerry? And that's what makes Tom and Jerry so wonderfully cyclical and perfect, because it's eternal, isn't it? It's the serpent devouring its own tail. It's Ouroboros. It's interesting. There's a lot of like storytelling that's like that. A lot of myths, a lot of folklore. But find Thomas and Marissa and protect William. So we just went down to the cliffside just then, guys, to pick up our priestly brother. And now we're going to have to climb up these rocks here. And I don't think they want you to do this on the horse. I think this is why the rocks are so intricate and stepped. So I'm going to get off the horse and do a lot of running on this sequence coming up. For all I know, you can use the horse. You don't need to, though. I just look at it as a way of dealing with things a little bit quicker. You might be able to go all the way around. But then I noticed that Thomas was making his way up this little ridge. So I did the same. And then it's time to take on these guys. The Indians themselves come equipped with bows. They also get rifles at certain points. The rifles, for some reason, are way more powerful than the bows, which I suppose there's some realism to that. But when you get the bow, it's a one-hit kill, and the rifle, a lot of the time, will not one-hit kill certain enemies. So you would think the bows would be a big step up in the enemy's arsenal. But as evidenced by this particular segment, which... in this chapter, I think there's only about 2 fights that I would say you might have some difficulty with. And there's only one segment I remember dying on. And I don't even know why I died. I think I got lucky with the RNG on the gunshots. But do you see how they were highlighted just then? You can kind of see it every so often. It's definitely an advantage. And I'm glad it happens, because this is one of the segments where it's really easy not to know where people are. But just then, I saw the heads-up display telling me somebody had fired at me from that side. I heard the noise. I spun. And there he was. But there are certain times when you do that and it's not the case. So you have to be careful. But as always, we will be chasing the star that guides us to our next objective, which is over here where we'll meet our brother, and then there's going to be a bit of a transition as we return to the shallow river crossing. Right now, my arsenal's looking real good. We've got 3-star pistols. We're pretty much equipped for everything. I'm a little concerned that my ammunition is low, and the message on the screen is doubly triggering when A, you know you're running out of bullets, and B, the game won't stop telling you. But this is just a little moment to get us back to Juarez. There's a couple of guys waiting for us here to put down really quickly. I don't remember this level being too much of a struggle the last time I played it either, so I feel like the Indian segments are always the segments where you don't look forward to them because you feel like they're going to be really tricky. But I managed to kind of scramble through this one pretty effectively. And I hope you're enjoying the videos, guys. I know it's not something that people are screaming for. Right now, there aren't really too many things coming out on my radar that I'm looking to cover, and a lot of the games I wanted to cover ended up being duds for me, so I didn't do that. There's a couple things I've got planned and a couple more passion projects I want to share. I also have a video by Godfather Dictator going up on the channel, so look forward to that. It'll be the only instance of a time when someone else's video has appeared on my channel without it being my video, which in all my times of doing YouTube has never actually happened, so it's a first for me, but it's a very important video and I'm looking forward to giving it, hopefully, some attention. But recover the wagon with the remaining 100 rifles, pick up your ammunition over here off the dead body, reload your guns, get on your horse, and then push forward. I do like these segments. I've always had a thing for forested areas and jungles in games, because my imagination always seems to run more wild than the areas themselves do, and it always brings me back to GoldenEye. If you remember on GoldenEye, there was an area called Jungle, and it was really difficult to see the enemies, because the enemies blended in so well, the visibility was quite low, and you would just like stalk forward through the leaves and the trees, and you just suddenly get attacked by something and have to fight back, and you were constantly eking forward trying to do that, and it always... This is tough, this bit, by the way. This is the first segment of the video where I think you might have difficulties, and the only reason that this is even remotely challenging is because all the enemies know where you are, and we don't know where they are, and the cover here is not fair, in as much that they have lots and you don't have much. I also don't have the range to deal with the guy up on the ridge, so that's a bit of a pain in the ass. And these people, when they shoot me, they're actually really, really hurting me, which comes back to the whole very hard being a little bit sporadic on how it wants to injure you. But keep on putting bullets down the lane. Eke out, wait for the regeneration. You might wonder just then, Chris, why did you reload when you only had like 2 bullets gone out of the clip? It's because I was waiting to regenerate, and if I'm going to wait to regenerate, I might as well, you know, get to work on keeping my gut. Like, look at that. I'm 1 bullet away from death right now, and I don't even know who did it. So someone over there can see me somehow. I need to be real careful. I think I saw him a second ago as I was moving. He's just to the left and down a little bit. But I'm focused on this guy, and I'm not in the range to hit him, which is real frustrating. This is one of the areas where the limitations of Ray are very apparent. Thankfully, he's a mean old bastard, so as soon as we get in range, these things are going down. And there we go, we get that guy, we get him. Did you see it just then? Did you see how it highlighted and kind of muted the background so he stood out behind that rock? That was the effect I was mentioning. Really, really cool, really, really useful. And one of those subtle things you might not even notice was happening, but it's helping your visibility all the time. It might even be some kind of passive for having a full concentration mode, which it wouldn't surprise me. I love the idea of things like that, especially in shooters. Because let's face it, guys, shooters are pretty basic. You put the dot on the people and they die. How they die and how effective you are at doing it are completely different conversations, which I'm going to talk to in this video. But fundamentally, there's not really too much to the gameplay, so when you can add some depth and some breadth to it by creating systems that govern certain things, I think that's an area of shooters that we really need to lean into. Because things like Bioshock and Fallout and Deus Ex, they've done really, really good jobs of adding RPG elements, and I'd really like to see it move forward in that direction, but also with action in mind. Because I don't really want RNG and RPG things governing my bullets, governing where they go and governing my aim, but the passives that you could get would certainly be really, really cool. Like, imagine in this game if you could wear some kind of necklace or some kind of totem. Maybe you could have made the brothers superstitious, so they always wore some kind of I don't know, a rosemary bead or a crucifix. Hell, you could have even had it be a dream catcher. Maybe they've got some, native rival tribe in their blood somewhere. It didn't even have to be anything too crazy, but it was an opportunity for you to buy these totems and these items from the shop, and they gave you different benefits. You could have had one that, increased the reload speed, so that Ray reloaded a little bit faster for all these crazy compulsive reloading that we're doing right now. You could have had one that enabled him to strafe quicker, or take less damage when he's moving, things like that. Make him more accurate when he's doing specific tasks. There's so many things you can do with it and get really, really creative with it, and it would have been cool to have that kind of added element. There could have been bandolier belts, there could have been holsters that give you an advantage. Can you imagine different holsters that enable you to do different things during the quick draw? Just little bits of mechanical movements that take the genre forward a little bit. And none of this is anything new, it's been in many games. It just adds that little bit of flair, doesn't it? Like the saddle on your horse giving you a benefit when you're on the horse, and perhaps different braided ropes for Thomas so that he gets some kind of passive for having his rope. Can you imagine if he could, like Scorpion, pull people out of cover and just, come here, get over here, and just wreck them? Can you imagine if there was some kind of tandem action where you and your brother could work together for some kind of special or some kind of ability that was on a realistic cooldown but very powerful when you got it? Like, it'd be cool if you could use your concentration meter on Thomas when you don't have a shot, and the computer just bang, 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 bang does their thing. That'd be really interesting. But this is the reverse of the previous firefight we were in. This is a segment where we have all the advantage and the enemies have very little. And the volcano guns, they're just so brilliant. They just wreck. In this range with Ray, there's just no man alive that can face this down. But let's talk about a topic I mentioned on a previous commentary and I didn't really go into too deeply, and I wanted to touch on it, which is this notion that playing on mouse and keyboard is just clicking heads, which I think is really funny. Because it leads into everything, doesn't it? And I don't want to go too off on a tangent on it, because fundamentally, I suppose, if you look at it on its basis formula, every single video game is just achieving a very simple task. How well you do that is indicative of how much time you've put into it and how much muscle memory you've developed, isn't it? Oh, this segment right now, guys, is going to be a chase sequence, an on-rails shooting section, where a bunch of riders are going to assail us. But it's not difficult because we have a Gatling gun and they don't really try that hard to kill you, so it's definitely not going to be a struggle, but use it as an opportunity to do as much cruelty as you can to these indigenous people. So, the idea that pointing and clicking is easy to do, I think it comes from an ignorant mind. There's no two words about that. It comes from somebody that doesn't have any experience in doing it, and if they have, they've never really had true competition to show them what the divide between themselves and a really, really good player is. But I feel like that's the perspective that everybody has until they are enlightened in those moments where they have to swallow their pride and realise that the adage of a bigger fish is a very true axiom. there's always one bigger, isn't there? There's always a steeper mountain past the mountain that you're climbing. And I think a good contrast would be something like Guitar Hero, because I've faced this quite a lot in my life with people that I've met on my travels, which is this notion that people think they're good at Guitar Hero. And I mean, a lot of people that say they're good at Guitar Hero, I've met many, and every single one of those people that I've met has played on normal. And I'm not taking away their achievements, and I don't want to come across as an elitist. Those people are good at that game. If you're playing on normal, you're probably better than about 60% of the people that play that game. Because there are the people that play on easy, and then there are people that play normal but do so in not a very effective way. However, there's a realization that has to come from yourself in that moment, a piece of self-criticism that has to happen. And that is the idea that there are two difficulties above where you are. There is a hard difficulty that introduces an extra button, introduces more complicated chords, introduces more complicated solos. There we go, guys, chapter 10's down, 26% accuracy. Oh, by the way, this very start bit, really difficult, for no really good reason. If you can't hit these enemies because you're out of range, you can't shoot them. And because I don't have a rifle, I died here. So this is not going to look that dangerous or that difficult, but trust me, these guys were on their perfect day, and I could not hit them because my bullets weren't working. So be very careful on that first fight, and try to bring a rifle if you can. Probably should have said that earlier, but the joys of this video, hindsight's 2020, use what I've told you, do not make the same mistake. And then there's Expert above Hard, which is even more complicated chords, and the solos are generally note for note accurate in the later games, which means the solos go from being kinda challenging to ludicrously challenging and incredibly demanding. You have to acknowledge when you're on normal that there is an ocean you haven't even dived into yet, and the people that have dove into that are objectively stronger and better than you are. And I know this because I play on Expert, and there's a mountain in front of me of people that are so good I can't even imagine ever being as good as them or even remotely close. And I play Clone Hero, which is Guitar Hero essentially, quite frequently because I really, really like that game. But I know, in my heart of hearts, as good as I will get, and I will try and get very good because it's what I do, I'll never be as good as those people. So I would never tell anybody that I'm good at Guitar Hero. My friends tell people I'm good at Guitar Hero. Other people might say I'm good at Guitar Hero, and that's perfectly fine for them to say. But you'll never catch me saying I'm good at Guitar Hero, usually. I'll generally say I'm okay, because in my mind, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. Where I want to be is real high on a totem that I'm real low on right now. So you come across these people, don't you, who say, I'm good at these things. And I had a friend at university, and I apologise if you've heard this story before, but I want to recount it for perhaps the stranger on this video that's like, this is a pretty interesting story, I'll hear it out. And he told me he was good at Guitar Hero, so we had a gathering one time at my house. And it was when Guitar Hero World Tour was out, so there's a little bit of time for you. And on that game you could download custom tracks that people had made in like a MIDI chiptune variety. They didn't have vocals on them, they sounded like SNES games, but it was a really, really good opportunity for me to play music closer to the stuff that I enjoy, because for some reason I never agreed with Skrillex and Paramore and a whole host of poppy garbage that has no guitar in it being a main focus for Guitar Hero, but alas it always was. And one of the songs that I had was by a band called The Human Abstract, which is quite a proggy band, and it was Vela, which is a really, really, really good song. And somebody had made that on that custom track. So when that guy came to my house, I was playing Guitar Hero at the time, before he came, and I was on that track. So I started it and I played through it, and by the end of that track, he was completely gobsmacked. Just absolutely destroyed, because I'd changed his concept in one 4-5 minute section. I'd completely changed his concept of what that game was and where his position on that pecking order was. And it's a strange thing for a person to experience, but it's essential. It's really important, because in that moment his mind was blown off, and he saw something that I don't think he knew could exist. And that's not to say that, you know, as I mentioned, I'm not the best player. I was just at that time, I was considerably better than him. And he'd never seen that. So in his circle, he was what I was in that moment. And it can be an incredibly daunting thing for your ego to take. And no doubt we've all had those moments. You know, I went to a convention when I was just getting into Street Fighter 4 in, I think it was 2016, 2015, something like that. And all I'd done at that time was go into training mode and learn my links and get better with my timing and understanding mechanics in the game. I'd not really played too many people. I didn't really know how to play on a decent level. And I went to a convention where they had a bunch of Street Fighter 4 setups, and there were people there who brought arcade sticks to play with other people. These were people that had been playing that game since 2008, 2009. This was, 6 years later? That's a long time to have a lot of experience, and fighting games have a lot of legacy skill in them. It's just the way they are. So I found myself going up against these people who were out of my league in every conceivable way, and all I did was lose. But I loved every moment of it, because in that instance it showed me how far I had to go, and it showed me where I was. It gave me perspective. And I played with those guys a decent amount, and I had a really good time. But they demolished me. They absolutely demolished me. I think I took a round off one of them a few times. And it shone a light on the weaknesses of my game at that moment, and it helped me in a big way. And I learnt from it. And I still suck at Street Fighter 4, but I love it, and I like to play it to this day, even though I've not played it in a long time. But there's two ways to take that moment. There is the one perspective where you see that you aren't as good as you think you are, and you then lab it, practice it, train, get better, come back and learn from it. Or you deny it. You delude yourself, you shelter yourself in this palace of ignorance and myopia, and at the end of that road there lies the same player that got humiliated months before. And I talk about this quite a lot in my walkthroughs. I talk about the idea of, do you want to get a better character in a game, or do you want to be a better player? Because there's two paths on a forked road, and on one of those roads there lies the same person who started that journey, but on the other one there's the opportunity to be somebody new. There is a pupa and a catalyst that transforms and metamorphoses into something better. And every game is like that, in my opinion. You might be thinking, Jesus Christ, this English bloke takes these games pretty seriously. I thought this was just meant to be a distraction from the life I hate. That's what you do with video games, more power to you, man. But to me it means a lot, because it's my passion. It's always been my passion. It's my life. It's what I want to do. And I do take it seriously, and I take it seriously because I believe anything that you love and anything that's worth doing is worth doing seriously. Doesn't matter what it is. I could be playing as a fucking Kirby in a Pokemon game. I'm taking that shit serious, you know? And I think that's really, really important. And to bring it back to the conversation, the idea that all that mouse and keyboard is clicking on icons on a desktop is preposterous. It's silly. And the people who say this, they know it's silly in their minds, but they won't allow it to be believed because they're using it as an excuse to lose. I think fundamentally the reason that anybody diminishes the value in another person's skill is wholeheartedly stems from either a jealousy or a pride altercation that is essentially making them want to belittle someone else's achievement. And I do it, you do it, we all do it. We do it in all walks of life, and it's no different in video games. The idea that all mouse and keyboard is clicking on heads, it's really, really easy, is like saying all chess is moving your turn, moving your pieces on your turn, and every piece only gets to do one specific move. Yet chess is a game that survived a very long time and is one of the most strategic games ever invented. It's the idea that simplicity doesn't afford depth, you know, and it's the argument against breadth being confused with depth. And that is a really, really good argument to get in with video games. Just because the game has a lot of stuff doesn't mean it's deep. And just because, you know, a game thinks it's deep doesn't necessarily mean it is. It might just have a lot of stuff. This segment right here, by the way, is another one that can escalate quite quickly if you're not landing shots like I was just then. So be very careful of that. But there are a lot of games, aren't there, where you can look at them and you can diminutize their value really quickly. I've been guilty of it myself several times, and it's an ugly characteristic that we seem to do for some reason. And maybe it's just a projection, a reflection of our ego trying to you know, soothe itself when it's challenged. I don't know what it is, but like look at a football game or a, you know, or a hockey game or a basketball game, any kind of sports game. All you're doing, every single time you play those games, the rules are the same. The sport hasn't changed. It doesn't need to change because it's been rarefied up to a point where it's kind of the perfect vision of itself. So at the start of that match, you want to get the ball and then you want to score. That's what you want to do. You want to tackle, you want to intercept, you want to dribble, pass around, and beat the goalkeeper. That's the gambit, isn't it? That's what you're trying to do. The whole game is you figuring out the puzzle that leads to you getting a score, getting a goal, and then winning because you have more than your opponent does. And they're trying to do the exact same thing to you. These are universal systems, universal standards in these games, and yet people play these games every single year for the whole year until the next one comes out because the meta game and what happens from moment to moment is so intricate and interesting to them that they see longevity in it and they see a lot of fun in it, so they play it a lot. Whereas you look at it, you're like, this looks fucking boring. All you're doing is kicking a ball around. All you're doing is kicking a ball into a net. That is one way you could look at it. But you would do such a disservice to it because you're missing the nuance, you're missing the magic, you know? It's like that mentality that I've come across in my life where people have said that cartoons are for kids. You ever come across those people that say things like that? By the way, this segment here is actually pretty dangerous too. Be very careful with these guys. These are Indians with rifles, and that is a terrible combination because it pretty much means you're going to get 1 to 2 taps, so be very careful. Then once you've done that, hit the dam and get out of dodge. I'm going to save my concentration mode for this next segment after I plant all the dynamite, because you're going to get ambushed by a bunch of dudes, and it's really easy to just use concentration and clean them all up like I do just here. And then you've got 30 seconds to take your time and get out of there. But isn't it funny that something as creative and as amazing and as transformative as the moving image can be misconstrued as this novelty for children? And I mean, it doesn't really value children a lot in that conversation, does it? Because saying something is for children is essentially saying, like, well, that's shit. That's shit, but some people like shit. That's what they're saying, isn't it? Well, let's face it. Like, I'm an adult now, and thus I can't interact with this because it's not to my intellectual level. And alas, I will not lower myself to such a state so that this is in some way acceptable. And if you've ever watched cartoons, there's so much artistry, there's so much creativity, there's so much maturity, there's so much intelligence to them. And that's not even mentioning anime and Japanese cartoons and, you know, some of the more adult-oriented stuff that's come out in the last 50 years. Like, the art itself speaks for itself in many ways. You can find shitty cartoons, there's plenty of those. But you can also find cartoons that are stronger, braver, more interesting, and doing more forward-thinking things than almost any other medium if you look hard enough. And I just find it so... It's strange to me that we're so quick to judge those things, to devalue those things just because we don't share that value. There's an ambush here, by the way, guys. Quite a few guys from behind, and then once you kill them, you go around a corner and take on a couple more. As I've said, these areas are quite dangerous because these guys do a lot of damage, but as long as they don't hit you and you put them down quickly, you should be okay here. And make sure you reload before you go around this corner because they're going to ambush you quite quickly, and I died on this corner, so be careful. But it's funny, isn't it, you know? All PC is clicking on heads, it's mad easy, so everybody should be amazing, yet they're not. Cartoons are for children, even though there are cartoons that have, you know, the same kind of themes that are in any of these movies that you need an 18 certificate to even go near. Like, a piece of irony for you here, guys. My grandma, who is very religious, she once said that I should have been sat down and read the Bible to, and if that had have happened, I'd be a better person, which I think is a disgusting thing to say to somebody, personally, but I love her for it, because I know what she meant. However, she wouldn't let us watch Nightmare Before Christmas. She recorded it for us on Sky when we were little, and it was a Christmas movie, so it's for kids, right? It's a movie for kids. And she watched a little bit of it, and she did not deem it suitable for children. She did not think it was appropriate for children's eyes. And yet, if anybody's read the Bible, which I have, guys, I've read several parts of the Bible, that is one of the most violent books ever written. I don't know if you've heard any of the classic tales in there, but you have everything from incest to genocide to gang rape to murder to... I mean, the hits just keep on coming, guys. If it was a video game, the fucking parents would be all over the news media trying to get it banned. Like, it's up there with some of the greats, you know. It's a classic. Classic for a good reason. Lots of action. So, in her logic system, she thinks I should be sat down and read this incredibly horrific piece of work that occasionally strays away from, you know, all the bad stuff and says, like, maybe you should not be a dickhead. Maybe you should be nice to people for once. That's the good stuff. Not so much that you can fuck my daughter part. But Nightmare Before Christmas, now that's towing over a line, guys. That's a line one cannot cross. Interesting logic, right? But here we go. This is the final sequence of this act. We're fighting back Barnsby's men, and they're making a massive push on you right now, so you have to be quick here, guys. If you're not fast to put them down, they'll get into awkward positions and they'll hurt you real bad. There's a sequence coming up where I'm going to move towards that ridge on the left, and I'm going to defend it and throw some dynamite. If you peek out in there for too long, you just get insta-wiped. So be really careful. There's also a Gatling gun sequence that gets really hairy too. This whole segment is intimidating because there's lots and lots of threats, but they never fully push. They never completely flank, so you're never really in any kind of danger. It's just an implied danger that will make you be more reckless than you need to be. So use it as an opportunity to shoot the shit out of them all from the comfort of your own rock, a la Wings of Redemption. And speaking of internet personalities that probably should die if there was a loving and just God in the sky, Darkside Phil, the greatest of our heroes online, over the Christmas period was streaming with the goal of raising $2,000, which you might be thinking, Jesus Christ, $2,000, that's crazy, what would anybody need that kind of money for? Well, you see, he has an adult life, guys. He has a full-time girlfriend, who's now his wife, and an adult house, which is like a doll's house, only bigger. And he's in a situation currently where he needs to get ahead on his taxes next year, which turn up every single year, and yet he always seems to need everybody's help to get on top of, because for some reason he doesn't seem to learn from the last time he had to get on top of the taxes situation and beg for money. But alas, you know, it's a long con. He's playing the long con, and it's working, because he got $2,000, believe it or not. He got $2,000 during his Christmas marathon, which was painful to say the least. I like to think that this video has 10 times the merit of everything he's ever done on the internet combined, but that's just my ego talking. And during this marathon, he was rather trying to be festive and doing his best to, you know, push everybody who likes enjoyable things to watch away by making it as mundane as possible. And then afterwards, on the following day when he streamed, and people asked him, you know, what he got for Christmas and things, he said nothing really. And I think that that's a beautiful insight into the inner workings of Darkside Phil's mind, because when you do a stream around Christmas, you're essentially saying, this is the festive period, I know this is a giving period, chances are my audience is going to be a little more generous than they normally would be, because it's the Yuletide season, people are coming in on all kinds of extra currency that they might not necessarily normally have. They've been saving for it. They're in a gift-giving mood. So you put on a stream, your audience is probably going to come through for you and be very nice and tip and subscribe and do all those great things that keep streamers in business, basically. That's what they're going to do. It's one of those things. If you stream on your birthday, you get the same effect. Stream on certain holidays, same effect. It's addictive. There is something in the air. Generosity breeds generosity, and such is the positivity of Christmas. It makes it very lucrative for some people, especially if they try to exploit it, which is ugly and sad, but alas, we're human beings, we've done worse. So, when Phil says, the day after, which is him still trying to cash in on the festive season, I find it so disrespectful. And I don't know if you feel the same, ladies and gentlemen, because when you say you got nothing for Christmas yet yesterday, your fans gave you $2,000. $2,000 is more than some of these YouTubers you watch online, guys, will get in a year. Some of these small YouTubers, they're not making $2,000 a year on their work that you adore, that you watch so much of. It's just not how the industry works. And Phil got it in a day. In a day for doing something that was mind-bogglingly tedious, that I couldn't stomach more than 15 minutes of. And if you've survived this video so far, you've done 20 minutes longer than I could do of his marathon. And here is a man that made $2,000 in a day, which is preposterous numbers. Right now, guys, you have to retreat to this hill over here. I've never died once I've got past the first push, but for some reason, I got perfectly cannonballed and instantly dead. I don't know how. On the very first attempt to run from there to here. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was a weird glitch. I don't know if I just got really unlucky and ran exactly where the cannonball was going to be, running into a programmed death. It was weird, but learn from my mistakes, don't repeat them, and demolish this video game. But isn't it funny that somebody can have such a successful day in this business that we do, yet can say to his audience, in complete seriousness, that he got nothing for Christmas? And I'm really hoping that the more astute of you are saying, well, Chris, why are you talking about the money that you got off of people online when the real value of Christmas is, you know, the time that you spend with your family and all the stuff that happens to the people that matter most, the things that transcend money, the things that actually matter rather than the things we think matter. And for you kind of people, that's just the icing on the cake, isn't it? Phil never mentions any of that stuff. Have you noticed that? It's like he's a robot. It's like he's a psychopath that's just turned off those feelings. He never mentions the quality time that actually matters and that's genuine. He mentions the faux quality time that he seems to have every single time. And I don't believe it because he talks about it in the same detached and cold manner that he talks about his fun and chill and positive streams. And if anybody's watched any of his streams, guys, they're not chill. They're not fucking fun. And they're the last thing from positive because he just gets baited the whole time to throw people under buses. And then he starts insulting his own fans and insulting his own chat and then asking for money when people aren't giving it. And when they're not giving enough, he says they're not giving enough. And he starts diminishing the value of what they have given. And it's just an ugly, ugly thing. But when you talk about every day being, you know, relaxing and amazing and the best, it starts to get to a point where people wonder, what reality are you living in? Because when Phil tells you that he's having these chill, positive, great gameplay streams, and that the donations and the tips that he gets don't reflect that therein lies the real truth, doesn't it? Phil thinks that the streams are fun. Phil thinks that people are having a good time. Phil also thinks that people show that they're having a good time by giving you money. And that's not true. It's simply not true. There are people who can't give that kind of money that he's expecting, that might be having a grand old time, you know? People giving you things for playing video games online are doing so because there's something innately in them that you've scratched. There's an itch that they're looking for that you, in whatever you did that day, happened to suffice. But it's also a concept of context as well. You might do it for those people every time you stream or whatever it is that you do. Maybe you're a Patreon guy on YouTube that makes every video a paid for. Those people have to have a circumstance where they can afford to do that. And this is what Phil seems to not look into. For somebody that does nothing but talk about finances, you think he'd know a bit more about it. Like, if you have bills yourself, if you're a little down on your bank account, you're not going to be giving these people money. Oh, there's a chapter after this. Interesting, the ghost towny place. Yeah. This is, for all intents and purposes, a pretty difficult level. But I managed to do it without dying, which is funny because when I streamed this level on hard, I died a bunch. And I don't know if it's because I was distracted or I wasn't ready for it or whatever. But just be careful here, guys. This is a pretty difficult segment that I'm going to make look a lot easier than it is. And whenever the game says don't leave your brother behind, you need to listen to that because if you don't, you will fail. And the game, look, so arbitrary trigger. He's meant to run that way, he didn't, and I ended up wasting time there. So sorry about that. But this idea of people giving you money every time you stream is just a complete and utter fantasy. And it's apropos for Darkside Phil because he lives in a fantasy because for some reason it works, you know. He's living in a circumstance that people can dream of. He's playing video games online and complaining the whole time, and people are paying him for it. You know, he's like Gordon Ramsay if he couldn't cook and if he wasn't funny, which should just be a really fucking whiny guy the whole time, you know. And believe it or not, I do think that there is an artistry to complaining, to critiquing, and I think it's something that I try to toe the line on as best as I can, because I said this to Godfather the other day, when it comes to complaining, there has to be some kind of credibility to the complaint. It has to come from a genuine source. You have to believe it, or it has to be true. Those are the two most important factors for a complaint or a criticism to be valid. And then additionally, if you can make it funny, then you're winning anyway, aren't you? Because even if your complaint is just a personal thing and everyone disagrees with you, if you do it in a manner that is quite light and has levity to it, then it doesn't matter if you're wrong. Because fundamentally, you turn something that can be quite irritating and annoying and frustrating for people, you turned it into something that hopefully made them smile or made them laugh or got them involved in the gag. And that is kind of the goal for a lot of what I do, or what I try to do, and the measure of my success is for you guys to say, ooh, that's interesting, and I want to talk about that, because I don't know if that's hitscan being amazing, or if that's me wallbanging. So you might notice, if you slow that footage down, guys, I shoot that guy when I'm putting my hands up, and the cover's in front of me. And I don't know if the moment I press the mouse, it's registering the hit, and then it's forcing me around cover so quickly that you can't see that the gun's actually fired. And the guns fire the frame you fire, and you don't have to wait for the animation. Because in some games, there's animation priority. Good example of that in Black Ops 4. If you sprint with a shotgun in that game and you press fire, you have to stop sprinting before the gun will shoot. Because there's something known as sprint out time that's quite punishing in that game, and same with Modern Warfare 2. Which is TOO, not 2. Because in Modern Warfare 2, they probably didn't have the same kind of sprint out times, because that game was crazy. But this segment right here, incredibly dangerous. I have no idea how I lived. I couldn't honestly tell you, but I did. And I'm really happy I did, because it makes it quite interesting, doesn't it, when you have moments like this in a walkthrough. But yeah, kill as many people as you can, try and get behind cover, try not to put yourself in such a shitty position, but I think the game puts you in that one, so it's not your fault. And if it is your fault, just blame me. But I've got some dynamite, so I'm going to toss it into the building and hopefully clear some people out. You see that I get concentration back from it, which tells me that I hit something, which is always good. And be very careful of the dynamite that this building is throwing. It is omniscient. It will be in the path of where you're going to, and it will kill you very quickly. It's a pain in the ass. The dynamite is some of the most dangerous parts of this game, which is quite funny considering that you wouldn't think it would be. I think they were parroting Modern Warfare and Call of Duty a little bit too much with that. Because the old CODs on Veteran with the grenades were just preposterous. But it's interesting, isn't it, when it comes to asking for money and playing video games on the internet and getting money and how you conduct yourself. Especially at the festive season. I didn't get to stream this year around Christmas, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate because I like to share in the festivities and I like to hear what everybody's doing. Oh, by the way, guys, if you come over to this door really quickly, this particular panel of wood in front of me will never fall off the door, so you will never be in risk of getting hit by the Gatling gun, and all you have to do is peek around the door and kill him. And I came up with this particular strategy because on hard, when I was streaming this, I died moving towards this door to go into one of those quick time events where you burst through the door and shoot people. Because the people inside the room were completely invincible waiting for me to do that quick time event, and they killed me as I was getting to the trigger. So I remembered this sequence not too fondly, and I tried my best to get ahead of it, and that's what I managed to do. But this is such a fun game. I'm hoping that if you've never seen this before, it's piqued your interest and you're going to go and check it out, because it really does deserve your attention. I recommend playing it on the PC though, because on the console, it's probably not going to look as nice as this. It's damn side not going to run as nice as this, because I think this game is a 30 frames per second game, and perhaps less than that. But that's not completely unplayable. You know, you can train your eye to not care too much about the frame rates. I just don't want to do that anymore, and thus I never will. Like, I can't wait for the PlayStation 5 for one reason, and that's the potential that Bloodborne might play on that console with better frame pacing and better frame rate. That, to me, is justification for getting that console. But I'm hoping at that point there'll be a good enough emulator to play it, because then I won't have to pick it up, but I guess we'll find out together, right? But now we just have to go inside the saloon here and find the target we're trying to save. And that is the end of this particular mission, I think. There might be something left to do. but I suppose we'll find out together. Whenever I see the tribal adornments and dressings that these guys have, it always reminds me of Turok. Because Turok had that chest, like, armor. I don't really know what it is. It was like a sequence of bones put together to make like a plate armor on his chest on Turok 2. And I always thought it looked cool. I used to draw it all the time. It was one of those things, because on the games magazines that I had at the time, there were the two images that made the character stand out. There was his bandana that had kind of like a jewel on it, or a lens on it, and a feather that I'm assuming was somehow used as a scope to double his vision or something. Or maybe it was just kind of some talisman that helped him stay safe. And then the second thing was that chest armor. And I remember that there was the tubular bones that were at the middle of the section, and then on the edges there were these circular balls that kind of kept it all together. And I drew it so much because I was so excited for that game. I was so stoked. And I got that game for, I think it was my birthday. It was a black cartridge as well, which was really, really exotic at the time. And it came with a walkthrough, a primer guide for Turok 2. Was it Seeds of Evil, I think it was called? And I read that walkthrough so much that the pages ended up falling out of it. And funnily enough, I never got past the Layer of Souls. I did Port of Ardia, and then Layer of Souls was just too hard for me, or the River of Souls. I forget the name of the second level. It was really hard. I think it's one of the hardest levels in the game, personally. I streamed Turok 2 on the hardest difficulty on PC, and I got my ass kicked. It was really difficult. But the bosses weren't. And I'll always remember the bosses as a kid. I thought they were the hardest things in the world. I have memories of me and my friends putting all the cheats on and shooting the bosses for like 10 hours, and they never died. And I didn't understand how anybody could do it. And then I did it without the cheats as an adult and realised I was just doing it wrong. I was shooting them when they were invincible, because I didn't know what invincibility frames were when I was a kid. You're looking at somebody that didn't know Mario had a run. Can you believe that? I learnt recently Mario has a run. I thought in Mario you just held forward, because the last time I played Mario was on the NES when I was like 6. So I honestly didn't know. And we went to a convention, and my best friend, who plays a shit ton of Mario, is like, why don't you sprint? I'm like, what the fuck? Mario has a sprint? And I call myself a gamer, I didn't even know that. Isn't it funny though? The things you do as a kid where you just don't know. That's the joy of gaming, isn't it? The innocence of it. I'll never get that innocence back. But I was an old man who thought Mario couldn't run. Because I thought it was momentum based. That the more you held forward, the more you built that bar up at the bottom, those arrows. But it turns out I'm going to have to play Mario again, because my Mario trivia is very lacking. But thank you for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this. The commentary went all over the place, but that's kind of my trademark. It's just what I do, and you either like it or you don't. That's the joys, isn't it, of the world. But yeah, thank you for watching, and you take care now.